Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the Leaders in Supply Chain that we are also streaming live here on LinkedIn. I'm your host, Radu Palamariu from Elcott Global, and it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Marcell Vollmer today with us, who is partner and director at BCG, Boston Consulting Group. He works as an advisor to executives all over the world for the full range of digital transformation and new business models in procurement, supply chain, and operations. He used to also be, in his previous positions, Chief Innovation Officer for Celonis, as well as worked for many years in SAP. In his last roles, most notably being Chief Digital Officer as well as Chief Operations Officer for SAP Ariba. Marcell, pleasure to have you with us today, and thanks for joining us.
Rado, many thanks for having me. Hello, everyone, and looking forward having a great conversation and also probably some questions what we get from the audience listening. Awesome.
Absolutely. And so I want to, reinforce Marcell's point. So do feel free, as always, to comment your questions, and we will take it as we speak. So as we begin, Marcell, maybe let's start with telling us a little bit about yourself. I know that you've had an incredible career from many perspectives. You started in DHL, then you went to the consulting world, then you went to SAP for many years. Celonis, now you're with BCG. Maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely, Radu. And most of my career you already perfectly summarized and mentioned it. But to keep it very short, I was 15 years at DHL, a little bit longer, so express supply chain business, working on the integration into Deutsche Post WorldNet. And then I joined SAP, and it was really an amazing journey, starting from centralizing back office functions, setting up shared services, first for the European region, later on a global scale. And I moved on also driving some of the post-merger integrations, business object Sybase. I was the integration lead. And after the new setup of the co-CEO office, I was asked by my boss at this time, the group CFO of SAP, Werner Brandt, joining and becoming the chief procurement officer. And that's basically 2011, where I really tapped into procurement. And I have to say, it was not really my career plan, but I got totally excited about procurement. It is such an amazing function. There is no better function in a company I could envision, getting full overview about the business model, all the different parts of the business, understanding it, and also generating impact with the largest groups of stakeholders you are interacting. You interact basically with all employees for whatever they need for their daily life when they order something. Very basic in a catalog, working strategically with lines of businesses. And then you have a very rich ecosystem. It was more than 15,000 suppliers you are reaching out. So CPO is really interacting with a lot of stakeholders, defining strategies and transforming also the organization, making it fit for the future. And this was my core task. This is the reason why I got promoted as Chief Procurement Officer, to restructure the procurement function, set up a global category management system, implement an end-to-end source-to-pay process focused on the stakeholder needs, and finally also select the right IT systems. And I got lucky that at my time as CPO, I was the business owner for source-to-pay, P2P. SAP decided to acquire Ariba, Fieldglass, and Concur, so all the market leaders in the cloud for source-to-pay, focusing on goods, services, temp labor, travel management, so travel booking and the reimbursement process. This was really exciting. This is why I stayed more than 4 years before I finally joined Ariba as Chief Operating Officer, going into one of the acquisitions, helping to integrate it first with Fieldglass, and also helping customers to become successful in really defining their digital transformation strategies by doing basically pretty much similar approach, driving really the right process, organization, and IT systems. And this is what I did then as Chief Digital Officer before I left SAP. Joined a startup, Celonis, amazing company for process mining, process analytics. And now today I'm here, and BCG is really an amazing company. And that's really a place also where I feel very comfortable, very much home, because I can use all my different experiences, what I could gain And I'm very thankful also for all the career opportunities what I got, that I can now bring all of that together in a strategy, the leading strategy consulting organization. And have to say, I started August 1st, so I'm now 7 weeks in my new job. It's really amazing.
Mm. And I want to a little bit double click and ask you, because a lot of our audience, and obviously we do executive search, and a lot of our candidates ask us, so how do you ensure when you make a career transition, and especially if you're changing domains, right? So you moved DHL, then you went consulting, then you went SAP, then there's quite a bit of shift now back to consulting, right? What are some of the key elements that you think make such transitions successful, right, in your experience?
I think from what I experienced by myself, and I'm not sure if I can really give this as an advice to everyone. I think staying agile, consistently learning, and also being open for new opportunities coming up, raising the hand and saying, "Hey, wow, I would like to help to drive, for example, an integration work." This is what brought me into the project by integrating DHL and Deutsche Post. Then moving on and going for a new field by supporting SAP, defining a global strategy on shared services, starting with regional focus and then expanding it. This was really also driven very much by great opportunities and also some agility by saying, "Hey, I'm flexible. I wanna step up. I wanna do something different." Being open also to relocate. This is when I moved on as COO, for example. I also moved from Europe to the United States, to Atlanta, Georgia. That's where I lived more than 2.5 years. And I have to say, it is really also driven, to be very fair, on having a little bit luck at the right point in time, being at the right place in an organization, but also driven by the agility I mentioned. And of course, it's hard work, getting new skills, learning, consistently learn, but also bringing all of that together. So that's what I experienced by myself. And if you want to derive one advice out of it, Radu, I would say the agility and willingness to new opportunities might be something which works out very well in thinking about also how you can open new horizons and develop yourself.
Mm. And on the topic, coming a little bit on the topic of procurement and focusing on some of the challenges that you see right now in your role as advisor when you deal with CEOs or chief procurement officers, what do they tell you that their main problems and challenges are today?
So currently, I think, and we have probably never seen it on such a global scale, how important procurement and supply chain management is. I would say that on a CEO agenda, procurement and supply chain is number 1 or 2. The reason for that is we have seen what can happen if an entire area in China, which is very critical for the global production, the Hubei area, so the city of Wuhan and the area around, is shutting down and really closing due to a pandemic. And I think that's the first pandemic what we all see, at least the people alive after the Spanish flu, what we have seen at the beginning of the last century. So this is really something where we see, wow, it is very critical to focus on procurement and to ensure that you have a resilient supply chain. I think it is not entirely new that a supply chain disruption can happen. In procurement, procurement people are used to working with events which certain disruptions on a daily basis. We got a little bit into that, and I got promoted as Chief Procurement Officer back in 2011. Some of you might remember that this was a time where the year started basically with Fukushima, a catastrophic event in Japan. A lot of companies and CPOs, I was at a conference couple of days after it happened, said, "Hey, fortunately, so it's a very unfortunate event and catastrophe, no doubt about it. Everyone felt sorry about it, but fortunately, a lot were saying, we don't have suppliers. We are not doing a lot of business with that area in Japan." A couple of weeks or months later, I met the same people and they learned, wow, I wasn't aware about the tier 2, tier 3 suppliers in my procurement process, and they were impacted by that region. And probably the next catastrophic event happened just a couple of months later with the flood in Thailand. And I think this was another learning for procurement. Wow, the majority of the global hardware, hard disk production is driven out of Thailand. Due to the flood, it is more than 2/3. Due to the flood, the hard disk production got heavily impacted by that. And with that, I think we in procurement, we had certain events, we had already to react much prior to the recent pandemic, what we have seen. Nevertheless, on such a global scale, it is an unprecedented event, and it's definitely something also where we in procurement need to put our heads together and work hard day and night. I think it was a tough time, or is a tough time, for procurement and supply chain leads by now thinking about how to best mitigate in the current times of a crisis to ensure that the supply chain production is running whatever your company does.
And there is also a comment from Diarrhea. I'll put it on the screen, and also it's a reality with procurement, right? The risk management and not just cost reduction, and a lot of times it's got to do with the fact that, well, historically the role of procurement is get me the right price or get me the best price, or there was a limiting belief, I guess, to a certain extent. So how do you kind of mitigate that? Of course, you still need to have cost in balance, but at the same time, this resilience usually costs more. If you have several sources where you get your materials, it will cost you more than if you have one source, which we've just learned by what happened that can be extremely risky. So what are some of the things that they procurement leaders and supply chain leaders need to be thinking about to balance?
So absolutely. So cost and getting the best price is absolutely key in procurement, no doubt about. But I think when you look at a price, you need also to consider and factor in certain components of the price, including the risk mitigation. A sole sourcing strategy, a single supplier strategy might be very risky if you are totally dependent on one region, on one supplier. And this can easily cause disruption in your supply chain. So therefore, a lot of companies are now thinking about, and when you look also in emerging technologies, disruptive trends, what we see right now, automation, robots, a lot gets more and more automated. So therefore, the main reason, and one of the great success stories of globalization, is certainly also benefiting from the labor arbitrage from countries developing, bringing hundreds of million people into the middle class. I think it's more than 400 million only in China, what we could see, stepping up and becoming middle class, which is amazing seeing, and in all other countries in that area, as well as in a lot of other regions in the world, a similar thing is happening right now, which is definitely great to see. But you need also to be clear about that the overall risk appetite, what you have in a company, you need to define and really see there's the labor arbitrage, there's probably also benefits in your manufacturing process, what you get in Far East, but there's also a sustainability footprint, the CO2 footprint, what you have by shipping everything, extracting raw materials. And I've seen cases, raw materials are getting extracted Australia or Africa, it gets shipped to another place, probably Latin America, North America, and then the final production, the spare parts are getting assembled in China, and then it gets sent back to Europe, to North America, wherever basically the goods are sold. That's also a very cost-intensive process. There's a lot of logistics in it. Of course, at the end, it is about the price, but it's also about the risk. Is it possible? And that's what I see in discussions right now from CPOs, chief supply chain officers, but also CFOs and CEOs are getting more and more interested in that topic. Can we have a closer proximity of our production? Is it really needed that we need to ship it all over, because the CO2 footprint and sustainability is getting more and more important, not necessarily only by the companies, it's also getting more important by the consumers. They want to know and understand, where do my products come from? And that's really something also where we need to think, yes, the price is very important, but we need also to see what are the total costs, what we have, and what is the risk. And this is currently where I see that a lot of companies are looking into all the value drivers of the procurement organizations. They are looking in the enablers, the process, organization, the people, the capabilities, the collaboration, the performance, what they have, and also on the technical infrastructure in really making it happen and ensuring that they have the insights in the data. A lot of companies simply don't know what are the where are their suppliers? Do they have tier 2 suppliers in certain areas? And therefore, this is currently what keeps a lot of CPOs and chief supply chain officers awake at night.
And I wanted to ask you maybe to discuss some case studies or example. I had a conversation yesterday with the chief procurement officer, and we were discussing the FMCG industry. And there's a couple of big considerations, right? You have the sustainability effect. I mean, deforestation, labor. I mean, you don't want to be obviously misusing, and there's been all sorts of discussions in terms of who is even working in your supply chain, and not to make sure you don't have teenagers, or I mean, there's been all sorts of horror story, right? So I wanted to ask you if you have some into this visibility or traceability of where does it come from, from a procurement perspective, knowing where your suppliers are, exactly to your point of having that transparency. Do you have some case studies of companies that did it well, and what did they do, and maybe what were some of the challenges that you observed in this process? Because it's not an easy process to implement and to get this visibility.
Absolutely, Rado. I couldn't agree more, because it is very complex, really overseeing an end-to-end supply chain with a lot of global players. I just drafted a little bit a picture about raw material extraction, logistics, shipping it somewhere, starting with the production line, with the manufacturing process, probably sending it somewhere else to the final assembly, and then for distribution, probably to wholesalers and then to retailers, depending on what the products are. So you see there are a lot of parties involved in different steps. What is key, and what I definitely see is that you need first of all get a really access to all the data available in the systems. It sounds easy, but I think every CPO, CFO would agree on that. The master data and the full transparency about the suppliers is all the time a challenge due to the magnitude of changes what you have, and also a lot of different systems involved, which basically lead to a challenge on the data quality. That's definitely one element. What companies, and you asked about an example, we have consulted one company. I got lucky to jump early on a project just after I started at BCG, that a supplier risk monitor definitely helps by extracting the right data and really showing what are my critical top suppliers. And I'm not talking about hundreds. I'll probably start with 20, 80, 100. In that case, start was 20, and then it moved up to a total size of 100. And really monitor them and get all the data around what are critical risks probably in that area. Am I dependent from weather forecast? We have seen that companies really struggle by having different temperatures and weather conditions. We see now that entire areas are challenged by there's a fire in California right now, so Napa Valley is impacted by that. So you see, you need to have the data, and you need to ensure really that you can monitor all of that. If you are dependent on suppliers in that area, you better know and understand it early, so that you have a fair chance to react. And there are lots of examples out there. I was very impressed about a strategy which was a little bit back in the past, where, for example, Ferrero, and I love Nutella, by the way. I have to out myself. Coffee and chocolate. Nutella I see as part of chocolate. It's a good one.
Good start to the day.
A very good start in the day. I love it. But we have seen that Nutella changed the mixture of the product. due to the reason that there was a very hot summer, the weather conditions changed, and the largest producer of hazelnuts, that's one core element of the chocolate cream, what Nutella is in Turkey. Basically, in Turkey, it was at a time where also the political situation was quite challenging. Basically, whether a political situation, there was a need to react, to really invest in basically taking over some of the farmers to secure a supply chain. And that's really where you see there's a lot happening and companies need to react. So therefore, implementing risk monitoring tools is something what helps to make your supply chain more resilient, to allow you to define the right risk mitigation strategies for whatever your business is in. And companies doing this successfully might even grow in a time of a crisis, or basically can overcome the current situation better than the rest. We see an overall decline in the global economy. The GDP will be below what it was last year. I think there is no doubt about. So therefore, hopefully it will be more a V-shaped recovery than a U-shape with a longer time. But I think it's still too early to predict. But data is key, and monitoring risk is key. And it's also key that you drive and benefit from all the digital transformation, the technologies, what you can implement for procurement and supply chain to really can be able to react on everything what's happening.
Mm. And I know on the topic of sustainability, I know that you're a big advocate for that, and we are also seeing companies like to also to your point that you want to minimize your footprint, your carbon footprint, but we're also seeing some of the large FMCG, as well as I think Microsoft made a pledge, Maersk Shipping made a pledge, Unilever, we have Nestle that they said by 2030, or much quite aggressive targets, which is good to be seen, and I hope that more and more will follow, right? So then there's definitely a need for, even if you're not obviously one of the big brands and you're just a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, but all of a sudden your contribution adds up to their contribution. So do you see this this playing a significant role in the future? Do you see more companies also adapting to this kind of sustainability pledges, or do you think that COVID-19 kind of put it on the back burner and it was okay, let's make sure that we don't go bust first and foremost, and then worry about sustainability later?
No, I think there's now definitely the right time to focus on sustainability, and you are perfectly right. I think it's a given. We only have one planet we have access to, and therefore a lot of companies are joining. Even BCG, I was very impressed about the net zero pledge, what happened, and Rich Lesser, the CEO of BCG, was announcing that September 1st, that we as BCG plan to reach net zero climate impact by 2030. And this is a great example also. And you would probably, when you go through all the companies, you would probably not really come very soon up with a strategy consultancy by looking at the overall impact. But you see, the topic is so important that all industries are really focusing on that right now. And I think we really need to see it is not only for the planet, it is also that as a people are really taking care of sustainability aspects, corporate social responsibility. No one wants to buy products with child labor in it, as another example of that. And therefore, I think it is very important that we see it in a broader context and focus really on the right elements, on sustainability and all the social responsibility what we have. You can argue if it's the UN SDGs, what we have, so 17 different goals defined by the United Nations. This might be one KPI system to look at, but basically all the companies are now really spending more time and investing also here. And then sustainability procurement is really at the heart of where the decisions are taken, because buying and deciding for suppliers with more sustainable product makes a difference. It might have a price tag, Definitely. We see this with fair trade coffee, fair trade tea is more expensive. But basically, that's also where you need to balance a little bit about what is really the risk what I take if consumers asking me for it and I have a chance to make more revenue because consumers see me as a responsible company focusing on sustainability objectives, or that I get a better price, but probably I get a negative press, or my products might not be asked by the consumers. That's a trade-off. What you need to decide as a company, and also how much are you willing to invest to go for the one side or the other. And that's what we see right now. Also, procurement organizations are very much looking into that, coming up with new KPI systems, assessing the entire supply base, defining also the rules for engaging, supplier code of conduct, but also then the KPIs. They want to have proof now that suppliers are really having also everything what it takes to make it transparent. You get new technologies where you even can ensure that it is not possible to change information in the process from the raw material to the final product. Look at blockchain, for example. I like more saying distributed ledger technology, which is a technology behind blockchain, which is more known for Bitcoin. But on the procurement side, it is also very important that you have end-to-end transparency about the supply chain, every single step, and that you can also factor in and build in the right sustainability objectives for your own company.
And on the topic of skills, because we also, you're at the point where there's so much, digital transformation in procurement, in supply chain, well, pretty much across the board, that has been accelerated with COVID-19. But what do you see as maybe the lacking, where the industry needs more of this type of skills, and where do you see the gaps also coming up in the next 3 to 5 years? Because this is a question we get a lot. What should I prepare myself as for the future workforce to make sure I stay relevant almost?
Absolutely. The future of work is a hot topic. We see now we have 5 to 6 generations in the play right now. All the generations what we have, the latest one is Generation Alpha, now joining and becoming more relevant as consumers, so everyone born after 2005. But also the generations before, Generation X, Y, Z, what we see, including the millennials, are definitely key also. And they have different expectations on a work life. And therefore, I think when you're looking at back office functions, what procurement certainly is and belongs to, you should also think about how to best attract and retain talents. And one element is doing something what excites people. And you might say, procurement, how can this excite? I get a purchase requisition, I need to look for suppliers, and basically then I send out a purchase order, I do negotiation in between, and then finally goods get delivered, goods received in the system, invoice comes in, and invoice gets paid. So that's in a very simplified way. Having something like that is much more exciting than I just described. The reason for that is you can make an impact. You can definitely also take decisions about, hey, line of business, where the purchase requisition is coming from. Have you thought about that you also probably can come up with an innovation, that you do something different, that you focus on sustainability targets? And I give you a great example. I think everyone knows what this is. We are all using smartphones, but whatever model you wanna use. So Gorilla Glass is a beautiful example for supplier-driven innovation. When Tim Cook, the current CEO of Apple, was the chief supply chain officer, procurement was reporting to him. He teamed up with Corning, as a glass manufacturer, to develop an entirely new glass. So as you can see from my gray hair, so I'm a little bit older, I remember the time, and I got my first mobile in 1992. It was an Ericsson with very tiny display. So for the millennial generation Alpha, you would not believe that this was possible. And there was a time before smartphones. Yes, it existed. The tiny plastic display basically got all these scratches on it after a certain period of time. You would not have even envisioned that you could have pictures on it because the display was really not good enough at this time. And look at the leapfrog. what happened. There was BlackBerry in between already with a good display, and I loved my BlackBerry with the keyboard on it. But basically, then the next step was 2007, when you see Steve Jobs was on stage, was showing everyone the new iPhone with all the capabilities that an entire industry got basically created. And one key element out of it is an innovation driven together with suppliers. There are many examples of that. The coffee taps, for example, the Nespresso machines, another one. Where you see it. You see a lot of these innovations happening in automotive to go for an entire industry. Now on the battery technology, what's happening. So therefore, this is also part of the job, and I try also to excite people that, wow, you can really do something different and you can create impact. And this is the reason why I suggest everyone look at procurement, and don't think about it that you start as a trainee in procurement or a category buyer and then you make it up to the CPO. Think about it, getting a certain time, creating some impact, understanding a company, take the opportunity to learn, to look also around what are the different areas, what might excite you. And I think we should no longer talk about just 10, 15 years in one function and make it up. We should talk about, hey, join procurement 2, 3 years. And I think procurement could be a brilliant talent pool for people getting a great education, understanding the company, and then probably they move on. Some might stay, might go deeper into certain areas and want to continue to be professional buyer, category leader in the future. But that's really where procurement has a lot to offer. And I can't really say more that procurement is really a function to consider, and procurement might be more exciting than it just sounds when you simply look on the process side, which is only one core element which will be driven in the future, highly automated, by the way. So think about procurement as a career opportunity, I would say.
You definitely convinced me, and I think the function needs more people like yourself to be able to well, storytell or sell it properly. I think it's not even maybe sell is a negative connotation to most people, but it's almost about how do you present why is it important. I think and it's not only for procurement. I think in supply chain in general, even manufacturing or shipping or transportation, this type of vital industries and vital functions that have just been historically not presented well enough for people to, and for maybe generation alpha. I didn't even know that this generation alpha, thanks for sharing that with me, or Z or Y, to understand this. Obviously this is the crux. I mean, everything that moves and makes and reaches us, and there's supply chain in it, there's procurement in it. It's just that we don't or it hasn't been presented on the right way up till now, and there's more people like yourself that are presenting in the right way and getting people excited about it, which is a must. That being said, I want to bring up this question which came from Andrea, which is a very good question, because you spoke about visibility and data analytics and monitoring risks, and her question, and I'm assuming she comes from an FMCG perspective, is around the available tools that you know of that could minimize the impact of sudden changes, because this can happen a lot, and then if you have a tool that's very specialized, I think there's the meaning behind her question. All of a sudden you throw it out of the window and you bring in a new tool. So is there something that can be done around this?
Yes, absolutely. And Andrea, thanks for the question. It's really great looking into the tools as well. And I think having a risk monitoring tool in place is absolutely key. But the risk monitoring tool is only as good as the data you are feeding in. And therefore, you need also to think and team up with companies specialized on that, like risk methods, for example, getting really all the insights, what you have, and for the suppliers you are doing business with, to monitor it on a consistent basis. There's a bunch of suppliers out there focusing on risk management. And I think overseeing that in a dashboard, and the dashboard sounds always something high level for executives. It's not. The dashboard I'm talking about on supplier risk goes down to a category level. Your top 20, 30 suppliers, depending on how large your category is absolutely key to come up with that. And you should connect the right data streams, the right input. Probably there's one delivering all, might be, then it's great. And then you could also define one tool here. If not, probably feeding in different sources depending on also the needed information what you wanna include might help you here to oversee everything what's happening: financial risk, catastrophic impact, climate risk, if it's dependent on weather conditions. Might also be that there's reputational risk, or there's something going on social media where you are better aware. You need to see that you feed all of that in and basically then monitor it on a consistent basis.
A final question from me, Marcell. Where do you see procurement going in the next 3 to 5 years? What's some of the major shifts that you foresee if you had a crystal ball and you were to take an estimated guess?
Yeah, I think it's fair, Radu, the estimated guess. I don't have a crystal ball, and it's difficult to make predictions, especially about the future. I think more Winston Churchill, Niels Bohr, and Mark Twain were using that quote. So what I would definitely see is, and when I joined procurement back in 2011, I think it was already 10, 15 years out that people were saying that procurement is at an inflection point. All the time, basically, I'm now almost 10 years in procurement. If you count shared services in, I'm with P2P as the number one process. It's even more than 15 years experience what I have in that field. I think we definitely see a change right now, and procurement is really, due to the COVID-19 situation, at an inflection point. And we have seen that procurement can step up, and that the risk mitigation strategy is absolutely key for the success of a company to keep your production up and running and to have a resilient supply chain. By saying that, if you ask me about a prediction in the next 3, 5, 10 years out, I think it's really tough to make decisions so far out. But basically, procurement will become more important. That's definitely what I would see, number one. Number two is that the function itself will significantly leverage disruptive technologies to really get all the visibility, the data, the insights. Andreas' question about the risk management tools to ensure that you have at any point in time full overview, a holistic picture about what's going on and where areas you need to look into that. I would say that procurement is definitely up for the next level in also seniority, attracting also new talents by thinking procurement in a different way, leveraging machine learning algorithms as basically just a tool which is standard to use, focusing and also including data scientists, data architects in the procurement function, having probably dedicated risk manager, because if you're in a critical area, you might really to be a little bit ahead of your competitors. On getting the data and getting the insights, and all of that, I think, will lead to a procurement function in the future, highly automated, so probably less people overall might work in the function, but the impact and the value generating focus procurement has and will further evolve, focus on really on strategic elements. And I see with that there is a significant element on the 4 key areas. The supplier innovation I would count into it. I would definitely see risk management as a key element. I would see the sustainability, what we just discussed, because it's getting more and more important. And finally, the resilient supply chain. I think these 4 areas will definitely lead to the success of the future procurement function. And it will be a high caliber, very impactful, value generating function in the future, leveraging and benefiting from all the automation and technologies. That's my best guess. At least that's also where I try to help companies defining the right strategies here at BCG, and hopefully also a lot will be successful. Coming back to your question before, it will be also a great place to work.
Super. Well, Marcell, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for all the sharing and the great examples. And keep inspiring people. I want to encourage everybody to follow Marcell on LinkedIn, because he's contributing and sharing a lot of useful information every day. You're one of the people that I follow a lot and I learn from a lot. So keep doing that, and it's our pleasure to have had you today.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for watching. Highly appreciate the great conversation, Rado. It was really awesome, and thanks to the audience for the question and listening in. Thank you.